Dan Haylett, I'm delighted to have you on the podcast. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, Paddy. How are you? Great to be here.
Living the dream. It's Monday, the 1st of September. The sun is shining here on the east coast of Ireland. What's it doing, and where are you, Dan?
So I think I'd rather be with you on the east coast of Ireland with my golf clubs, if I'm honest with you. But I am in a very nice part of England called Malden, although it is just started raining cats and dogs as we
There you
speak.
go.
So it's normally quite nice. We're a little offshoot of the Thames. It's a lovely little kind of boating
Oh
community.
wow.
It's a lovely little town, but it doesn't look so lovely right at the moment. So my
Uh,
walk down to the quay is going to be not going to happen today.
Look, apart from the weather, sounds nice, Dan. Dan, you're at the vanguard. Mentioned to you of retirement planning, financial planning in the UK. You're doing an awful lot of good work. We both mentioned Pete Matthew in the UK of Meaningful Money, who's another that's out there educating people. Give us a quick synopsis of where you're at and what you're working on now for people.
Yeah, we were talking before we hit record. I mean, I'm very much kind of at the forefront of the education piece. So I'm a director and owner of a regulated financial planning business here in the UK called TFP Financial Planning. So, I walk retirement life with real people, but I'm a big believer in that there's a huge amount of education that needs to be got out into the world, particularly about this phase of life, which I'm uber focused on and completely delved into. So, as well as running TFP, looking after clients on an individual basis with the team, I'm really starting to trying to get a lot of work out there, educating people about retirement as a whole concept, right? Not just about the financial side of retirement, but about that stage of life. And a lot of that passion and drive has come from, again, walking life with real clients and understanding these people that have done very well, saved diligently, got enough money, and yet get into retirement and feel utterly lost. And I've got numerous stories, Paddy, but the one that really kind of shaped this 6 or 7 years ago was when I put together what I think was the most wonderful cash flow plan. Looked absolutely amazing, more than enough, never going to run out of money, etc., etc., etc. Client retired, met them in 6 months' time, and it looked like they were just about to get divorced. He was very, very despondent with life, didn't know what to do. And I kind of had that moment, right, where you go, well, myself and the team have put all this work in. We feel like we've done a really good job. You were happy with that work, yet your saving for the last 30 years and our last 12 months of work with you feels like it's for nothing. Like you're not spending it, you're not enjoying it, and why? So that's what kind of started me to dig into more about behavioral finance, the psychology of money, more about kind of coaching people through this life transition, and kind of where I am now with the podcast and the book and the blogs and everything I do to try and help people at this stage of life.
Brilliant. And your book, which I just received the end of last week, "The Retirement You Didn't See Coming," with a nice picture of you and a banana skin potentially, is retirement. Is
Yeah.
that how you see it?
Yeah. When I was putting together the front cover, I went through numerous different things and put a few
Yeah.
posts out on LinkedIn and said, "What does this look like?" I think the first one I had was like a black hole, where people were like, "That's a bit extreme, right?" That's a bit extreme. So I was like, "Yeah, no, I get that." But yeah, look, I think retirement. The title of the book says it all, right? A lot of people that I work with didn't see the retirement that they started living. They didn't see it coming. And I do think retirement, if not thought about properly from a human point of view, from a life point of view, and then from a financial point of view, is a banana skin. People can up on it. Doesn't necessarily kill them or break their legs, but it's really uncomfortable. It's
Mm.
something they avoid. It's something that that can cause a bit of damage, etc. So yeah, I do see retirement as a banana skin, because everybody, hopefully, as we get to that point in life, if we're lucky enough to get there, will go through these thoughts about stepping back from work and what does life after 50, 55 or 60 look like. And it is a really big banana skin that a lot of people will have to face and navigate.
You do some very nice sketches kind of Carol Richards esque, with a Sharpie and a napkin or whatever way he started doing it. And
Yeah.
one that really stood out for me was this one around the size of the problem. I think it is as titling. Can you talk
Yeah.
to us about that?
Yeah. So, kind of one of my biggest early realization, again, coming back to that story I just told about
Mm,
the client, was that I think we've got the retirement problem wrongly diagnosed. And if I don't want to kind of create something that feels like it's an issue or a problem, I want to be a bit more positive than that.
yeah.
But I feel like everyone thinks that retirement is a maths problem, a maths issue to solve. When in fact, I think it's a human issue to try and navigate. So the sketch simply says, look, we think that retirement is more of a maths problem than a human problem, when I think you and I know, working with people in this space, it's much more of a human problem than a maths problem. Yeah, the maths are part of the equation, but a much smaller part than what it is, and that leads into a lot of these things that I talk about around, well, if we get the money right, we're going to be okay, aren't we? And if we get the cash flow plan right,
Mm,
we're going to be okay, aren't we? And if we and it kind of comes down to that, and it's because of that focus, we end up trying to solve complicated maths problems and not very complex human things like purpose and identity and relationships and structure and everything like that.
okay. And it's something that I'm acutely aware of, and we've spoken to experts like yourself on the topic. One of your testimonials in the back of the book was Dr. Daniel Crosby. We had him on recently. We had him on 8 years ago. It's the personal side of it, the psychological side of it, the connection, the relationships, the purpose side of things is it to me seems a more difficult nut to crack. Pardon that expression. Um, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think that you kind of answered the question, right? I mean, human beings, when it comes to our behavior, we will take the line of least resistance.
Hmm.
If we think about our brains, they don't actually like consuming calories or working that hard. So if I say to you, oh, by the way, we can solve your retirement quite easily with some numbers, or you
Hmm.
can do some really difficult work on kind of analyzing yourself and coming up with all of these, asking yourself really deep and meaningful questions about what will make you pull back the duvet, what's your identity when you haven't got a business card. They're really hard questions. But if I say, can you calculate my withdrawal rate based on this number, it's a pretty easy question to do. So I think, again, human beings will go to the maths problem because it's a complicated thing that they can solve, and it's the line of least resistance.
Okay.
Um, and so, but I know, and I think you and I will know that people that live the best retirements are the ones that tackle the complex issues and start to try and we're not figuring it out once and for all, but walk life through that lens, whilst making sure they do have the numbers thing nailed down. But the
Hmm.
ones that ask themselves and try and answer and navigate these difficult human questions um, have the best retirements. But it's hard. It's hard work.
It it is work, right?
Mm,
Absolutely, and that's my own experience of it. It is it's important, but it's rarely urgent
mm,
in people's minds, right?
mm.
Yeah, I will do that. Yeah, I'll absolutely. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I'll start thinking about that, and I'll start mapping that and writing stuff down and jotting and journaling and talking to other people, whatever, planning that side of things. But does seem to be a reasonable degree of inertia, and your book has outlined lots of tools and techniques and questions and reflections that I'd love to get into a little bit more here in a moment. But at what stage do you think people should be thinking about both sides of it ultimately, but the human side of it then as well?
Yeah, actually, it's something that didn't make it into the book that I have written about before. I had a great conversation with Fritz Gilbert. I don't know if you've heard of
Mm.
Fritz, the
Yeah,
retirement
we had him on.
manifesto.
Yeah,
Yeah,
brilliant
so
guy.
Fritz
Yeah.
is brilliant, and Fritz has been a great a great person to have on my side as I kind of walk through the concepts around this. And he talks about this stuff as well. And what I think is really important is to focus, to have more focus earlier on the human side. And I think when people leave it too late, i.e. one of my illusions in the book is like, oh, I'll figure it out once I get there. That's what a lot of people do. So they focus on the numbers, get the numbers right. Right, I've got enough. I'm going to push the retirement button, and then I'll figure this other stuff out when I get there. And they end up what I call the blank canvas problem. They retire into nothing and become actually 40% more likely to be depressed, 40% likely to get divorced, all of these other stats that then kind of come in play because they actually haven't figured out what life looks like, and can it be a real challenge to build it then. So my kind of thoughts on this would be, forget about retirement as a date. Forget about a one-time event. When we think about the second half of our life, so I would say post age 50, we would want to start preparing ourselves for what this second half of life looks like. If work is still giving you purpose, fine. Don't worry about it. If you still enjoy it, fine. But come to that conclusion. Don't just walk aimlessly into that way of life. Get back and intentionally go, is work giving me everything I want it to do? If I was stripped away from this job tomorrow, who would I be? Where are my relationships? If my relationships are all at work and I don't go to work anymore, I might have a problem. If my relationships are all with people in the same age as me, I might have a problem. If I haven't got any community out. So, we can really start to think about what this looks like. We don't have to plan for the date that we're going to step back from work, but we can start to make some intentional decisions post age 50 about what this might look like for us if and when we decide to either fully step back from our careers or maybe give ourselves a bit more time, so do 2 or 3 days a week, maybe launch our own consultancy business. Maybe we kind of do, I had one client say to me, very, very highly successful person said to me that he can't wait to go and stack shelves in the local DIY store, right? And just kind of go and annoy people in there for a bit. Like he just wanted some simplicity to kind of but he still wanted interaction, still wanted to kind of speak to people. So I would say that, a good, as soon as you start getting into your 50s, really start intentionally thinking about what your life looks like for the next 20, 30 years, and how you're going to then be able to live that. I think that comes first. Money comes second. A lot of people go, right, I'll get to £1 million or €1 million or whatever it might be in my 800,000 in my pension pot or my investment pot, and then I'll figure out what it looks like. My feedback to people is if you do it the other way round, I think the amount of money that you need is probably going to be quite a bit less than what you think.
Interesting. What makes you say that about the money ending up possibly quite a bit less than you think?
Because I actually think if you do the hard work, and again, this is not actually, I think this is fact from my clients that I work with. If you put the work in to understand what is meaningful to you, what a meaningful, joyful, contented life looks like, how you want to spend your time and who you want to spend it with, what truly gives you purpose and meaning and identity. I haven't met anyone that hasn't come out of that with an understanding that actually it's not what they thought, in that this isn't big trips, this isn't grandeur stuff. This is actually foundational time that doesn't actually cost a huge amount of money. And I think that, to me, and again, I've worked with people across different wealth spectrums, and it pretty much comes down to the same thing. It's like, well, actually, when I figure this stuff out, I want to spend more time with my family. I want to spend good quality time with them. We do want to go away and do some things, but actually, when I calculate what all of that might cost, and it's like, well, actually, what I can't wait for is pub lunch on a Sunday with my wife and the dog, right? That's, I haven't been able to do that because I'm worried about Monday morning commute, and I don't free myself up. And that's a real story. Neil and Claire, who are in the book, that was Neil's thing. I asked him 6 months into retirement, Neil, what's the thing you enjoy the most? And this is a guy that's been high flying, done very well, got, significant pots of money, and, lovely, lovely human being. And he said, Dan, pub lunch on a Sunday with Claire and the dog. And I was expecting something very, very different to that.
Great.
So that's just my feedback. If you do that work and you understand, that retirement or this part of life is 365 days, this is not you've got every day to live. If you think about how you want to spend your time, it will often be a lot less than what you think it will be. Yeah, you'll still want to do some good things. But yeah, I think that's the feedback that I would give people.
Very interesting. I do think sometimes when people are, and it's a difficult question to answer, how much will it cost you to live when you do, let's say if you left work next year, right? It's a very, very difficult question for any of us to answer. But I do think there is often a tendency for people to pick some random round number that might sound like lots, right? And would give them lots of choice and freedom and possibly too much, right? As you said. So that's a very interesting one.
Yeah.
Do you think in terms of establishing a number, do you think it's best to start from the bottom and work through, look at our basics, utilities, food, running the house, some of the nice things, the discretionary spends, the luxury spends, or how do you find is a beneficial way for people to tackle that one?
Yeah, I think starting with the known knowns is a good thing to do, right? Again, I mean, no one has any idea what their gas bill is going to be like in 5.5 years' time, right? I mean, who knows what it's going to be? So, and actually, I think where we struggle is to try and create certainty around these numbers. And again, as I talk about it a bit about it in the book, it's this stage of life is full of uncertainties, and the earlier and easier we can become mentally to be able to kind of deal with that, i.e., understand that this is all uncertain, then the better we might plan ourselves. We could put these numbers down, but we just don't know. But I think if we know if there's mortgages to be paid, or we know that there's school fees, or we roughly know what shopping and all of that is going to be, then we can have a look at what that costs. The known knowns, some of those unchangeables. Then we can go, well, actually, what are the things that we want to add on top of that? And then what are the things we want to add on top of that? And actually what that does, Paddy, is form, I think, what I do with a lot of clients is look at the research behind how we age, how we spend, how we act, et cetera, et cetera. And it kind of highlights those three phases of retirement. Those go years, go slow years, no-go years that are talked about, or I've kind of redefined them a little bit to go exploring, nesting and reflecting. But that exploring years, those go years, well, that's when you should be starting to think about, well, what 2 or 3 additional layers of spending do I want to do on top of the basics? I might want to add more to the everyday travel budget, the every year travel budget. Sorry, I might want to kind of go, well, actually, there's 1 or 2 really big things that I want to do. I've had clients that they've got a once in a retirement opportunity to go to Australia to watch the Lions play rugby, right? In their 10 or 15 year window, they're never going to be able to do it unless they did it this year.
Yes.
So it's kind of like, think of those things that you want to do and add that on top. And that creates what I think, is more of a spending plan rather than an expenditure spreadsheet or a budget. Those 2 words make people like cringe and tighten up.
Absolutely.
Let's create a plan to spend your money. And that plan should be including health, longevity, time, et cetera, et cetera. And go, well, you're probably going to want to spend a lot of that in the first 10 to 15 years of retirement, because we know spending and everything will fall. We know that health will deteriorate. We know that your will and want and desire to travel will deteriorate, and all of that stuff. And so plan to spend there and think about what that looks like for you, and then build that into some of your cash flow models that financial advisors create for you, because then you can have a sense of reality about how much will be enough. Because I think a lot of people approach this and go, right, I'm going to spend £60,000 or 60,000 euros every year from age 60 to age 100, and it simply is not the case. That's not how it works. And one of the reasons I think people say that, and you mentioned it earlier on, is because people are scared of running out of money. So they build in too much buffer early on, too much buffer later in life, because they're so scared of running out of money, rightly so, that they end up just paralyzing the ability to spend money when they should be spending it.
Interesting. And I'm reminded of a client that we started working with this year, and in our planning we assumed what is a relatively large amount of annual expenditure for the next 10-15 years, right? um and I was like, I really think you're going to struggle to spend this, right? This is a big number. You're going to have to be doing quite a lot of stuff. But retired this year, and I sent them something for review, let's say 10 days ago, and followed up with them on Friday. And his reply was, "Oh, Paddy, look, come here, too busy. I was here, there, and everywhere. I'm in London now at Coldplay." And I was like, "Feckin' love it.
Love it.
You're going to have no problem hitting the number
Yeah.
that we've set out." So I think it's lovely to see when people do get that. They're like calves let out into a field in spring, basically, is an expression that some would use it here, tearing into it. It's wonderful
Yeah.
to see.
I think a lot of people need like we talk about the permission to spend money, which sounds weird, right? You've worked so hard all of your life to save up an amount of money that gives you a sense of freedom to start to, enjoy life and not be shackled by corporate world or business or whatever it's been in. And people struggle, and they need permission. They need, an understanding that they can. And I've talked before about the skill of spending money. Right? I mean, it's a skill that no one's taught. We're taught how to save. We're taught how to, be prudent for the future, delay consumption, and all of that stuff. And I think the trouble that people have when they enter into this phase of life is that we've been hardwired and conditioned for 20, 30, 40 years into that way of life, and all the security that saving money gives us, etc. We're then told to, go spend it. I say in my book, it's a bit like spending 40 years building a sandcastle and then told to intentionally go and smash it down. People feel quite sad about that, right? And it's a real. I think it's one of the, if not the biggest psychological shift that we would go through in our lives when it comes to, our financial life and all this transitions. And I think it's one of the best jobs that we can help people with, is to unlock their unlock the spending shackles that they will probably have.
And what springs to mind is, if we look at the last century, picking that round number, where defined benefit pension schemes were so prevalent, right? There was no, people couldn't wait to start receiving it, because it wasn't deemed as, I'm spending my money. I'm now getting what I'm entitled to, right? Whereas when you're not in a defined benefit, or it's defined contribution, or you accumulated liquid assets, it's very much a case of, okay, I'm going to have to start drawing and emptying these tanks, this reservoir. Is that a fair observation?
Paddy, have you got 2 hours to talk about this? Because I could go
No,
on.
I
No.
don't.
But let's do it. Let's do it really succinctly. I think you are absolutely spot on. When we're talking about people now, we're not just talking about a modern retirement. We are talking about an ultra modern retirement, in that the people that you and I will talk to that are approaching into their 50s, mid 50s, late 50s, early 60s, people that are thinking about this are what I would say first generation retirement rebels. And in that, they have got no one to really look at. Their parents and grandparents retired very differently, both from a financial and an aspirational point of view. When you look at how much people have to take on their shoulders when they think about this stage of life now, there's more noise out in the world. They're thinking about more. They can travel more. They've probably got a little bit more wealth than their grandparents and parents had. But all of the weight of their money is on their shoulders, or the vast majority of it is on their shoulders. They're more aspirational. They want to, they're more purposeful. They don't settle. I think of my grandparents, they just settled for what they got, right? They had what they had, they got what they got, and they settled for it. People are not like that anymore. They want to dream bigger, think bigger, and push the envelope. So I think it's a real challenge for these people that are retiring now. And you hit the nail on the head. people retired with a guaranteed lifetime income, that didn't feel like capital, i.e.,
Yeah.
drawing down money, right? As you said, they were entitled to the money, they got the money, it come in and they spent it. And there's a load of research out there that is really, really both shocking and amazing for us to kind of dive into. And that is that people find it so much easier to spend income than they do capital through all different wealth levels. So, you know, annuity, secure lifetime income, all of this stuff that has been shoved to one side in favor of accumulating pots of invested assets, I think has actually contributed to, you know, the anxiety around modern day retirees. I think it's definitely contributed to the fact that people won't spend their money because they're worried about running out and it's all they've now got. Um, and the stuff that we can do, right, to help them with that, you know, we can layer in guaranteed income and all of that stuff to help people unlock that, unlock those spending shackles. So yeah, I think you've absolutely hit the nail on the head, and something that people need to pay a lot more attention to.
Interesting. The your In your book, you talk about the most dangerous day in retirement. Okay, so we've got to the point. Somebody is retired. Um, Tell us about day 186.
Yeah, so it's not this isn't baked in research and science as such, right? But actually, it does have some meaningful time attached to it. So yeah, 6 months in is kind of what I say, or it's day 182, I think.
Beg your pardon.
So yeah, day 182, 6 months in. To me, that is the most dangerous day. And I think a lot of people will kind of go, actually, it might be the day that I leave work. It might be, you know, da da da. But actually, the most dangerous time in retirement is when the novelty's worn off, when, you know, you've like decluttered the garage, you've done a load of things in those first 6 months. And I talk about, you know, it's kind of like, if you think about the realities of life, it's Tuesday morning, you're in your dressing gown, it's 9:47, you're talking to the dog is looking at you as if to go, what the hell are you doing in my house? You've opened the fridge a couple of times, you know, it's like, what you know, it's that, it's that thing. And I done a presentation a couple of weeks ago, and I said it's a bit like what they used to say in football when they used to say, you know, Lionel Messi is a wonderful footballer, but can he do it on a cold Thursday evening in Stoke? Right, you know that can, you know, that's fine. And I say retirement is wonderful, but can you do it on a rainy, wet Tuesday morning at 9:47? And you know that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that to me is the most dangerous day, because it it doesn't happen. It just sneaks up on you quietly, and I say you don't crash. You don't kind of have this moment. It just kind of drifts up on you. There's no rite
Yeah.
of passage. There's no nothing. Um, and all the time, you're kind of, everyone's going, oh, how's retirement? And you're going, oh, it's wonderful, because you think you should answer it like that, right? You're lucky. I've been retired. I'm in retirement. It's great, thanks. But deep down, you're going, gee, I struggle to kind of think about what I'm going to do today, or what does that mean? Or I've got to kind of do something that I don't want to do. So that's the most dangerous day. And I think people need to understand that if they don't think about what they're going to do and how they're going to do it and who they're going to do it with, then that dangerous day can creep up on them. It might take 6 months, it might take 12 months, but there will be a point, and maybe even if you've done all the planning work, Paddy, and you've done all the
Mm.
hard questions, there probably still will be a point when this thing creeps up on you and you go, my God, what's this all about? You know, I miss being that person. I miss having a full inbox. I miss, you know, having the business card. I miss the water cooler conversations. I, you know, heaven forbid, miss the commute on the train, etc., etc. It's, you know, yeah, that's what I would say is the most dangerous day.
Okay. And you outline 5 pillars of purpose, identity, relationship, structure, and well-being in preparation. So in preparation for that second half of life, which I really like that concept of, you know, if you're mid to late 40s or 50 onwards, then really let's start mapping out this second half of life and what you want that to look like, whether that's working, not working, whatever the case may be. So to to ease the impact of that day 182, what are the key things that people could or should realistically be doing with regards to those 5 pillars, or is there something else that people should be working on?
No, I think I call it the 5 pillars of a thriving retirement. I mean, you could probably cross off the word retirement and say life, right? I mean, these are
Yeah,
what I think are
absolutely.
the 5 pillars of a thriving life. And so, yeah, purpose, identity, relationship, structure, and well-being. And it doesn't matter what age you're at. You could be working on these and getting them aligned. But I think when it comes to thinking about this for your second half of life, the reason why they become more important is because there's a transition from something to something, right?
Yeah.
Or a bigger transition from something to something. And actually, when you get to this point, that transition will involve a lot of loss. So, whereas if you're younger, you're probably going to create purpose and create identity and create relationships. When you come into this phase of life, you're going to lose purpose, lose identity, lose relationships, lose structure, and probably lose some of your well-being. So you've got this real funny period of defining kind of what you had, understanding you're going to lose some of it, and then figuring out how to create things that are more meaningful for you across those 5 pillars. So I think when it comes to this stuff, this isn't the one thing I will say for people that look at them. Again, take away the idea that this has to be grandeur, change the
Mm,
world
mm,
stuff. When I talk about purpose, I don't talk about, I don't know, solving world hunger
sure.
purpose. This is purposeful stuff that makes you pull back the duvet every morning. Um, and when I talk about identity, this isn't about creating a new job role. This is understanding deep down who you are and who you want to be. Um, I ask clients to write their own business card out sometimes. I kind of go, well,
Mm,
actually, if you could write on your business card to give to someone, what would it say? And get them to be creative and get them to, answer that question. Um, think about the loss of relationships that you'll go through and think about the new relationships that you'll get. And don't forget that your relationship with your spouse or your partner and your children will change as well, because you've
mm,
not been in each other's company for this amount of time. It's one of you have gone to work, both of you have gone to work, you've come together in the evening, you've spent a bit of time at weekends. Now you're going to be in each other's pocket all the time, potentially. It's a very different dynamic. So again, the one thing I would say is that this is just, I think it's much more foundational stuff than what people think it's going to be.
okay.
Um, and yeah, I would kind of go through that process. The process for me is threefold. It's what have I got now? What am I going to lose? And then what do I want to create?
So it's a great opportunity, right?
Oh my God.
Ultimately, massive
Yeah.
opportunity to view it that way. Is that fair?
Oh, again, I mean, I think this state, if we are blessed and lucky enough to get to this stage of our lives in our 50s, and we're thinking about what the next 20 to 30 years can look like, I think that could be the best phase of our lives that we've ever had.
Mm,
And we've got such an opportunity to create a life that is aligned with who we truly are, what we truly believe in, the people that we love, the things that we love doing. There's no other time in life that's going to give us that potential opportunity. And so we should want to put the work in, right? I mean, we put the work in to book a holiday. There's a load of work that goes in that. We put a load of work in probably at the start of our careers to kind of get on the career ladder, right? We think so. I mean, I say that this is almost is in 3 phases. You've got your early phase where you're kind of learning, but you've got no wisdom, so you're kind of at school, um, and then you go into the middle phase of life where you're earning, but you're constrained. You might be in like corporate life, and then you get to this end of life bit, this kind of second half of life, I should say. And I would say you've got freedom with wisdom. I mean, what a wonderful thing to have, right? You've got all of this knowledge and wisdom about who you are, what you like, what you don't like, what you want, what you don't want at this point in life. And you've probably got some money attached to it, and you've got a bunch of time that you could take. What a wonderful opportunity to seize and have such a wonderful meaningful, impactful life. So working on these things is going to be hugely important, because if you don't, I think it can quite quickly spiral into somewhere where you don't want it to be. And I think being intentional about understanding that these are really, really important things.
Okay. My sense is that it can turn maybe from a great opportunity into, at least perception wise, into a challenge and a problem to be solved. All right. If you don't put the time into it.
Yeah.
Is that a reasonable kind of observation?
Yeah, I mean, in the book, I talk about what I've called the retirement reinvention curve. This kind of 3 phases, 8 stages of kind of retirement, and it's not like a linear curve. It is in the drawing and in the description, but you can kind of hit phase 3, stage 7 before you hit phase 1, stage 1, if that makes sense. It's all different components, but at the lowest ebb, you get into like a very doubtful, depressive stage, right? Because if you haven't put the work in, you'll then start doubting why you've done it. You'll be comparing your life with other people's lives. You'll be thinking, I should be enjoying this because I've worked hard, I've done the thing, and I'm now here. And what you end up doing is you get into this doubtful phase, and people just go back to work because they're like, well, it's the only thing I know. They
Yeah.
crave the lanyard again for whatever reason. And so I think it can be really, really important to understand that there's ebbs and flows and highs and lows in the emotional human journey of retirement. But if you don't put the work in, it's very hard, I think, to really get out of that middle phase where you start doubting, you start kind of being a little bit, become feeling quite uneasy about it. And you never end up in that kind of maybe that flourishing phase where life is just life and you're enjoying it because you've got, you know who you are, you know what you
Got
want to do,
stuff
etc.
going on, and you're
Yeah,
busy and engaged, and
exactly. Yeah,
you're on the journey.
yeah.
You mentioned memory planning.
Hmm.
I've heard you speak about memory planning. Can you tell our beloved listener what that's all about?
Yeah, so I'm not taking any credit for memory planning as a concept. It's been written in a couple of books. I mean, one book I'd encourage everybody to go and read is Die with Zero by Bill Perkins. I mean, he talks about this a lot in there. But it really is kind of suggesting that we need to make sure that when we are thinking about how we're going to spend our time and our money, this is about memories and experiences. So we are not just going to turn our money into income, we are going to turn our money into memories. And when we start thinking about memory planning, we then look at spending our money through a very different lens. What memories and experiences is this money going to create? And I think part of that, when we talked about spending before, we get out of that thing that shiny things give us pleasure, and they do and they don't. They do for a very short period of time, and then it just goes away completely. So at this stage of life, when you're thinking about spending your money, think about memories and experiences first. What am I going to take away from this? What can what experience am I going to have, and what memory am I going to take away? Because the thing about memories, and Bill talks about memory dividends, which I love. It's this constant recall of the thing that you've done. And I'm sure you and I and many of your listeners have gone through this. You sit with family members over Christmas dinner or any type of gathering, and you talk about stories. Do you remember the time when you went and done that and you made a complete fool of yourself and it was really hilarious? Or do you remember the time when we went away there and had that wonderful time and done that thing together? So what you end up doing is you get a much longer hit of happiness, and it's intrinsic happiness that you get, not external
Yes.
happiness, and you recall that for years and years and years. And that's why it's so important to be able to think about investing your money in memories, I call it. If you want to try and reframe how you're going to spend it, making sure that you are planning to have memories. I go back to that story about my client who went to the Lions, in Australia. It was like, well, the questions around I can go, but should I do this and that? And I've got this opportunity to go to that dinner and all of that stuff. Is it really a bit of a splurge of money? And I kind of talked about memories. I'm like, well, what memories would that create for you? And he's like, oh, it'd be amazing. I'm like, well, we don't need to. I mean, you're answering your own question, right? I mean, this is about that kind of that concept.
Okay. Yeah. And I think it gives a different lens, I think is the word you used, Dan, right? Different perspective, a different way to view your money and how you're going to use it.
Yeah. And actually, one of my sketches suggests a different way to think about what's left behind. So I don't, when I talk to people, I don't say to them, this isn't about leaving money on the table. Like, if we're going to produce these plans and we're going to come up with some of these financial numbers, and the vast majority of people I see are not wanting to, feel very, very psychologically unable to accept dying with zero, because it gives them a lot of very uncomfortable at the back end. But if your net worth continues to grow and you're not spending money, and you get into your 80s and 90s and here's that pot, I'm not going to show you an amount. I'm not going to say, by the way, you've got €1 million or £1 million left. What you've got there is all missed opportunities to create memories and experiences. That's what you've left behind. You've not left money. You've left the ability to have done that there, have them yourself and create them for your family. And I think that's where it starts to give people a little bit of, that. You mentioned Carl Richards. Carl says a wonderful phrase. Sometimes you need to give people an empathetic hug, and sometimes you need to give them a punch in the nose. And I think sometimes it allows you just to kind of go, look, this is reality. If we carry on the path you're going to carry on, and you're saying this, then you are going to leave all that behind. What does that look and feel like? Could you bring some of that forward? Could we start thinking about some of those things that you might want to do outside of things that you've said you want to do? Dream a bit bigger for me, because we can think about that. And I think that really does change the picture a lot for people.
I find that very interesting topic, because sometimes if let's say a client will most likely die with and leave a very large legacy, okay, but they say that they are spending all that they want and need to spend, that they're doing all that they need and want to do. And so sometimes I feel, okay, well, let's not go and say spend money for the sake of spending money, right? At all. It's a case of, okay, well, if you absolutely are living your best life, as they say, and creating the memories that you want to create, however you want to create them, then great. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think that's, you can't, I think it's a very dangerous thing to just to spend money for the sake of it. Yeah. Right? I mean, people will feel, you need to, if you're spending your money, you need to have some sort of value from what you're spending. Absolutely. There are people that I work with that could turn left on the plane every time that they travel, yet never turn left on the plane because they see zero value in it and wouldn't enjoy it. You need to enjoy the experience of what you're spending your money on. Otherwise, it means nothing. So absolutely, there are people that have put themselves. But I'm working on something at the moment, Paddy. It strikes up another argument for me, is that actually for a number of people, is there a kind of an over-saving stroke overworking problem? Because if you haven't, if you've figured out the lifestyle that you want to lead, we go back to our earlier point, and you figured out roughly how much that might cost, and we don't know, but you can make some sort of projections. Are people saving too much and working too long that puts them in that position? Could they have stopped earlier? Could they have, reduced their working hours earlier? Could they have spent more time with their grandchildren when their grandchildren were younger? Those kind of things that I think adds into this. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting area for me, because you don't want to force people to spend money at all.
Absolutely. It's very nuanced. And speaking of which, when it comes to financial planning, which, we all know and recognize is heavily weighted for lots of good reasons to the financial side of things, and the maths problem, as you pointed it out as earlier, which I think is a great way of looking at it. What do you think the role of financial advisors, financial planners are in terms of the human side of it? And it's something I'm constantly aware of and conscious of, that I'm not a psychologist, and that's not usually what people are hiring us for. Although we will sometimes um, assume that role based on what's going on for a client. But what's what should clients expect from a financial planning firm with regards to the whole picture here?
Yeah, interesting. I'm probably a little bit. I'm not outspoken on this. I mean, look, I think we we are blessed as financial planners for our clients in a way that I think, um, because money is such a lightning rod for emotions. It's such a rooted thing in our being, and it kind of perpetuates across so many areas of our life, both positive and negative, and perpetuate across our life as children and young adults. And it's such a huge thing. Um, we get to have conversations with people that I think no other person has. I get to have conversations with people that the spouses look at one another and they're like, "Why have we not talked about this before?" The first time we're talking about this is in front of Dan. Like, what's happening here? They've been married for 20, 30, 40 years, and they haven't had these conversations. So I look at it. I look at it in a way that if we are having those conversations with people, i.e., how their money makes them feel, both positive and negatively, what their money is doing for them, both positively and negatively, how their money can help support their goals and dreams and aspirations, how their money gives them challenges and issues and fears. Um, we have those conversations. I think it's our duty to train ourselves to be able to take those conversations forward, and help our clients live their most meaningful life. Now, as you said, like we're not paid psychologists, we're not paid counselors, we're not marriage therapists, but sometimes we assume a lot of these roles for people because that's how it goes. So I think the future of financial planning, given that the maths issues will probably be taken care of quicker and easier through a lot of technology that's coming in. It doesn't mean that the value that we can do for them goes away necessarily on that, but I think our value as someone that has had these conversations with hundreds, if not thousands of people, we know how money fits into the whole psyche of us as human beings. We should help people live their best life. We should, I would say coaching and guidance is where modern financial planners are going to go with this. It's kind of how can
Yeah.
we guide and coach them through, these life transitions where money's a big part of it. How can we help them build financial plans that are in conjunction with their goals and aspirations in their life, and have great conversations with people to help them do this, unlock some of these things. We don't need to have answers to the questions. We just need to ask
Yes.
great questions and
Ask the
have
right question.
space to kind of listen.
Yeah. And to use that phrase that you mentioned earlier on, sometimes to an empathetic hug, and sometimes to give them a punch in the mouth, right?
Yeah, yeah,
To go and do things maybe or not, as the case may be, based on the financials that we see and know, right?
yeah,
Yeah, and look, without turning this into an echo chamber of cheese, I do think it is a hugely privileged role that we have when you have that kind of a relationship with somebody where they're coming to talk to you about X, Y, and Z personal situation or scenario or opportunity or challenge. I think it's wonderful, and I absolutely adore those conversations when people do feel that they can then reach out to me to have those. I think it is really something.
yeah. And I mean, again, a personal thing for me is if I felt like I was having that conversation with someone and I couldn't or didn't want to take it any further, and I just come back to the numbers, it just doesn't feel right to me. Like it doesn't, like you unlock it to a bit and then you go, yeah, but numbers. And again, my point here is that when you do the research into how humans react to stories and numbers, it will unlock everybody's thoughts, right? Two sides of the brain, right side, left side. Numbers sit on the side of our brain that doesn't actually relate that much to us. We're very skeptical of numbers. We don't believe them. We ask a lot of questions about them. But stories, on the other hand, well, stories, we relate to them. We take action off the back of stories. We believe stories. And if we can become better storytellers, that sounds a bit fictional, but if we can, rather than calculators, then I think that's going to resonate with our clients and help them live that life. If we stay in calculator mode, like we know, right? Again, create these wonderful plans that basically says you've got 100% success rate. You're never going to run out of money. You're absolutely fine. They are concrete and robust. Yet these people still never do the things they should do because they're stuck on left brain. They're stuck on numbers. They don't believe them. I've created wonderful cash flow plans for people and they're like, it's too good to be true, and I don't believe it. Like I don't believe that can happen. I don't believe I can spend that amount of money. So you have to take it out of the numbers and back into storyland and get in and kind of go, well, tell me what it would feel like to spend your money on that. What memory would you create if you went and spent your money on that? Not how much can you spend. Get it into story world, and that's where our skills will really, really come to the forefront in the next few years.
Love it, Dan. Thank you. Okay. One of the final questions I ask anyone that comes on the show as a guest is a book recommendation. So it can be fact or fiction, but a book that stood out for you. And I know you've mentioned Die with Zero by Bill Perkins. And obviously we've mentioned The Retirement You Didn't See Coming. You can't give that one, Dan. So it has to be something else. So a book that for you stood out for whatever reason that you maybe go back to or had a deep impact for you.
I wish I hadn't said Die with Zero now, because that would have been one. There's actually a really, really amazing little book, and actually the author's been a guest on my podcast, Patrice Jenkins. So she wrote a book called What Will I Do All Day, and self-published, and it's a small book, doesn't take long to flick through. But I actually would recommend that to anybody that's thinking about retirement. It's full of stories, full of Patrice done years of research into interviewing retirees, and I think it's a wonderful, punchy read that a lot more people should read.
Love it. Thank you for that. Finally, where should or could people go to learn more about you and your thoughts, your teaching and the book, etc.?
Yeah, so I'm not the only social media platform I'm on and active on is LinkedIn. So I'm very active on that. So please, follow me or connect on LinkedIn. I'd love that. And then I've got Humans versus Retirement, which is the podcast and my sketches and my blogging and all that. So that's humansvsretirement.com is the website. And the book, The Retirement You Didn't See Coming, is after slogging it out, is now available on Amazon, which is great. But you can buy it through other avenues as well if you go on my website. Yeah, and then my regulated business, TFP Financial Planning, which we work one-on-one with people and couples on their retirement plans. So Google us, search us up, connect with me, and I'd love that.
Hit me up, yo. Dan, thank you very much. Lots of really, really good ideas and thoughts and provocations there. So thank you on behalf of our listener. Thank you very much, Dan.
Thanks, Paddy. Appreciate being on.